We're going to be starting off by learning about absolute value graphs. In general, absolute value equations are given by y equals the absolute value of x. And if you think back to maybe the first time you saw it, absolute values, remember, make numbers positive. So whatever we plug into an absolute value, you're going to come back out as positive. So if you plugged in a positive 2, it would come out positive. If you plug in a negative 5, the answer would come out positive 5. Now we don't know how to graph this shape just yet, so just like anything we don't know, it's a good idea to make a XY table where we're going to plug in a bunch of x values into the equation, and then what we're going to get out are the y values, and then we can graph all these points. So let's start with some simple numbers. Let's go 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to plug those in for x, and we're going to get out y values. So plugging in 0 in for x, the absolute value of 0 is just 0. We plug in 1, the absolute value of 1, positive 1. I plug in 2, the answer is 2. I plug in positive 3, my answer is 3. So we've created a bunch of points here that we can now graph and start to see the shape of this absolute value. We have our y-coordinate, our x-coordinate. So I'm going to go ahead and start graphing these. My first point is at 0, 0. That's the origin. Next point, 1, 1, 2, 2. So everything here is in quadrant 1, 3, 3. And as we continue, maybe we plug in 4, we plug in 10, we plug in 100. These numbers will still come out positive. So I plug in 10, you get 10. You plug in 100, you get 100. So we can show that this will continue growing off in this direction. All right, it's a nice straight line. My points aren't the best right now, but it's a nice straight line. Everything's nice and even. Now, what we're seeing here is that maybe if we tried to take a guess, maybe the points would continue off in this direction. We're trying to guess the trend. But let's plug in some negative values over here. So like the next one might be negative 1, negative 2, or negative 3. And let's see what happens when we plug those into this equation now. So if I plug in a negative 1, remember, you plug a negative number into an absolute value, it's going to come out positive. So we're going to get a positive 1. Same thing for negative 2. It's going to come out as positive 2. And negative 3 is going to become positive 3. And now we have another couple set of points that we can go ahead and graph. So negative 1 is to the left and up 1 right there. Negative 2 up 2. Negative 3 up 3. And we see what happens here is instead of crossing that x-axis, this bounces back upwards. And it will continue going off to the left, so we'll show that with an arrow. This makes a V shape. So we can compare this a little bit to last year when you learned the parabolas. Parabolas make a U shape. Absolute values make V shapes. And just like a parabola, this point here is called the vertex, that starting point. Now, in the future, we don't want to have to make this table every single time we graph. What we're going to do is analyze the actual equation and be able to create a graph based off of little shortcuts from the numbers that we'll see. Now, in order to do that, we need to analyze what these numbers actually mean. So what I'm going to show you right now is the general form. The general form equation of absolute value. That equation is y equals a absolute value x minus h plus k. Now we've seen the y and the x before, but now we're introduced to some new letters. We've got a, we've got h, and we've got k. A is going to represent, and I'm putting it in quotes here, the slope of the arms. Okay. H and K make up the vertex. Now H is going to be the x value of the vertex. Meaning that K is going to be the y value of the vertex. One big thing to note here, and it's going to be on h. Because of this negative sign in front, h is always going to be opposite, and I'll put that down here in quotes, or parentheses. It's going to be opposite sign of whatever you see, and I'll show you that in an example. But this right here is going to give us a much quicker way of graphing absolute values rather than putting a table every single time. So let's take a look at an example of this. So they're going to tell us to graph the following. Y equals absolute value of x plus 2, close absolute value plus 3. So we want to tie this into what we just saw. Two things we want to find: the vertex and a, the slope. So vertex is h comma k, where h is the inside number and k is that outer number. But remember, h we have to do as the opposite. So I see a positive 2, my h is going to actually be written as negative 2. K we keep the same. That's going to stay as positive 3. The a value is the number in front of the absolute value that's being multiplied. Now we don't see it there, so that means it's a 1. What might be helpful is to make that a value, that 1, into a fraction, because now we're reading it as a slope, a rise and a run. Remember, rise over run. So what that means is positive 1 up, positive 1 to the right. And now we have enough information to go ahead and graph all of this. So I'm going to make a graph right over here. All right. So the first thing you want to do is graph the vertex. My vertex is at negative 2, positive 3. So that's 2 left and 3 up. So there's my vertex. And now from that vertex, from that starting point, we're going to now apply the slope. So up 1 over 1. So up 1 over 1. I can continue that pattern because it's a straight line. Up 1 over 1. Up 1 over 1. And I can go ahead and connect those with a straight line and draw an arrow because it'll continue forever. The great thing about this V shape is everything's going to be symmetrical. It's going to be the same on the right as it will be on the left. Everything's symmetric. So I can apply the slope also to the left. I'll go up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, and continue that. I can show that with an arrow. So we've made ourselves a nice V shape, not curved, nice straight lines, V shape. All right, let's take a look at another one. Let's go ahead and graph the following. Y equals 4 absolute value x minus 2 minus 1. So we're going to do the same thing. We want to find the vertex and we want to find the slope. So the vertex is a point made of hk. H is the inside, k is the outside, but h, remember, is always opposite. So we see a negative 2, we're going to write that as a positive 2. K stays the same, negative 1. A, the slope in front. This time we see a number, that number is 4. Make it a fraction. This way we can read it as rise and run. So we're getting a little bit better with these. We're going a little bit faster. So we can see how this is going to look on the graph. All right, so my starting point again, positive 2, negative 1. So 2 to the right, 1 down. Right there's my vertex. The slope, positive 4. So that's up 4. 1 to the right, so up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 to the right. I can continue that pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 to the right. And we're making a nice straight line here. I can also go the other direction, up 4 over 1 to the left, up 4 over 1 to the left, And the same thing goes that way. So we've got a nice V shape. And you'll notice here, this V shape is a lot skinnier than the first one we drew. And that's all dependent on the slope of the arms. So you notice here we had a 1. Here we had a 4, and look what happened to the arms. It got skinnier. Let's look at a third example here and see what happens when A is something else. Let's go ahead and graph y equals 1/2 absolute value x minus 3 minus 1. So the first one, A was 1. The second one, A was 4. This time, A is 1/2, a number smaller than 1. Okay, so let's see what happens then. But still, the vertex is the same process. Positive 3, negative 1. Okay. So I'll go ahead and graph the vertex. Positive 3, negative 1 puts us right about there. That's my vertex. My slope is now up 1 and then over 2. So up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. So I can carry that pattern out if I have enough room. So we look at what happened here. With a number smaller than 1, my V shape actually got wider. Okay, so interesting to see what happens when we change the A value, change the slope, and play with these different numbers. One last one for now. Let's say we wanted to graph y equals negative 2 absolute value x plus 1 minus 3. So let's work it the same way. Let's find that vertex. Vertex. Take the opposite of the inside number, opposite of the h, negative 1. My k stays how it is. That's going to be a negative 3. And my a this time, the number in front is a negative 2. Now let's see what that's going to change once I make that a fraction and start graphing it. 2, 3, 4. All right, so my vertex negative 1, so that's 1 to the left and then 3 down. That's my vertex. And now I'm going to read my slope. Negative 2 means that I'm actually going to go down 2 and 1 to the right. So I can draw some more. Lines down here so I can get a better graph. Okay. So down 2, 1, 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. I can also go to the left. Remember, down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1. So if we try and summarize this up, what actually happens is when I have a negative a value, my V shape, my absolute value goes downwards. Just like if we try and tie this back into parabolas, when you had a negative a value on your parabola, the same thing, your parabolas face downwards. So we can keep that same pattern in mind.